pleasantly surprised, enjoyed it. It didn't, light my broom on fire, but it definitely made me go, yeah, that was a good movie, and I had a good time with it.
Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of Hocus Pocus 2. My name is Daniel. I am one of your hosts today, and joining alongside me are my Warlock Coven, Anthony.
I wish death upon you, Daniel.
And Shahbaz.
I want to leave this review so quickly. Warlock Coven, and then I don't know. Anthony's a pirate, I guess. I'm not sure what's happening.
That was a witch. That was my wish.
Oh,
I was trying to think of like a Hocus Pocus thing to say, and then I'm like, Kalakazoom, Kalakazam, Shazam. I'm like, I'll just
you cast like
wish,
7 curses right there.
I'll just wish death. Death is always
wish death. It sounds like you were like wishing scurvy upon thee. You know what I mean?
Like we didn't find your treasure.
I'm definitely sure sounded more pirate.
It could have been
witch.
scurvy. Yeah,
could have
been. Shay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. We got a little, we got some like cold weather coming in, so I got a little cold recently, and like I haven't had like a cold in a long time, because of like being really safe out there with like masks and shit,
and stuff.
Yeah. So now I'm like, ew, what is this feeling? Luckily, it's pretty much gone now, and it's I'm pretty much all clear. But yeah, it was just kind of weird for a couple of days.
That's good. Anthony, how about you? How are you doing?
Same old. It's just we'll talk about the weather. It's raining, but you know what? I'm doing a little bit of like Halloween things this year, so I'm getting some decorations. I'm thinking of like what to put back there. I'm gonna probably frame some stuff. So there's a lot.
What is that behind you? Like you got this like scary doll thing in the bottom right corner.
Oh, right here.
That's a lamp.
Down here.
Yeah. Why is it moving? It's got like a hair piece. What is that?
I don't know what it is. It's like some sort of like statue. I don't know.
Sort of like Incan tribal.
Yeah, it kind of has like like this like I think it's like an Indian statue.
I'll confirm that later.
Yeah, I don't like. Truthfully, I think it's Indian based, but I don't know.
I've never seen that on my side of the world.
It's not like an artifact from India.
Yeah, I've seen the Mummy Returns, man, and I've seen what you've been able to conquer.
Interesting. Speaking of backgrounds, though, you may notice for video watchers of this episode of the Movie Podcast, it's a bit of a different background I have going on right now. The Movie Podcast studio is under construction, but it is going to be coming back with a vengeance very, very soon, and it's going to be looking very, very cool. I'm very excited to reveal it once it's done, but until then, you may be getting this very just drab, weird mystery door behind me. But it's okay. That's life. But I'm really excited for this renovation to be done because I think it's going to look really, really cool. And I think it's going to take our show to the next level, as they say. Should be really good. But as always, you can catch a brand new episode of the Movie Podcast all throughout the week. And you can catch our interviews and reviews and all the latest movies and series. We just recently spoke to Michael Giacchino, and the cast and creators behind Werewolf by Night. You'll be able to listen to that review and watch it as well. Next week on the Movie Podcast, we're kicking off October with the Spooktacular here on the Movie Podcast. So we're kicking it off with the Hocus Pocus 2 review. We have some Hocus Pocus 2 interviews dropping next week as well, too. So it's a lot of fun. Like Anthony said, we're getting into the full Halloween spirit. And if you go back to, the first year of this show, we also we did a Halloween episode, and I remember the video that you edited, Anthony. We did like such a fun like voiceover and everything for. We should probably reshare it again this year. But
we also did the Mad Libs.
We did the Mad Libs as well too. The Curse of the Rubbery Knife, which was a lot of fun. And then the year after that was COVID. And Halloween did not exist. And I'm trying to think what we did.
No, we were already scared enough that year, I think.
We were scared enough. We did a commentary as well, too. So maybe we'll do another Halloween commentary for you.
Yeah, I think it's about time,
Yeah. I remember doing
bring back the main episodes.
Yeah. Bring back the main episodes, 100%.
I think I did a post for Halloween 2 years in a row. And you said to me, don't do those posts. They're scarier than the films. I'm like, okay, well, I won't do them anymore.
Yeah, no, you did a post that was really scary once. I'm like, dude, I'll be honest, this is going to get flagged on Instagram for like graphic
Yeah.
content.
Yes,
Because
it
it was just
was.
like all like heads exploding and demons barfing, and it was a lot of stuff. It was a
Yeah.
lot going on. But yeah, Shay, you mentioned bring back the main episodes. Main episodes will be returning in October as well. It's been an absolutely wild ride on the movie podcast the last month and a half with everything from the Rings of Power to TIFF to and everything in between. But main episodes will be making their return in October, so stay tuned for that because we have lots to catch up on. We have just lots to talk to one another about. There's a lot on the table that we got to address. No, we just want to have a good time, and those will be making their return, so don't worry. Stay tuned for all of that. But today is all about Hocus Pocus 2. This is our spoiler-free review. This movie has been almost 30 years in the making. It's a Disney Plus original film, and it's going to be premiering September 30th, 2022, exclusively on Disney Plus. And I want to say thank you, as always, to our friends at Disney Studios Canada for making this happen for us. That's tomorrow, by the way. If you're going to be watching Hocus Pocus 2, I know Hocus Pocus is a huge film for a lot of people, myself included. This is a film that I would watch every single year. It's like a staple film for me. And it was always one of those things that, like, okay, we're getting a sequel to this. How is it going to hold up all this time later? Well, we'll let you know very, very soon. But Shay, I would love for you to kick us off with the synopsis.
It's been 29 years since someone lit the black flame candle and resurrected the 17th century sisters, and they are looking for revenge. Now it is up to 3 high school students to stop the ravenous witches from wreaking a new kind of havoc on Salem before dawn on All Hallows Eve.
Hocus Pocus 2 is directed by Anne Fletcher, and it stars Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, Kathleen Najimy, Sam Richardson, Doug Jones, Hannah Waddingham, Whitney Peak, Belissa Escobedo, Lilia Buckingham, Froy Gutierrez, and Tony Hale. Now, Anthony, start us off. Give us your first reaction, but also give us your history with Hocus Pocus. I'd love to know more.
So I was alive when Hocus Pocus came out back in 1993. I remember, I think it came out like in July or something like that, and it was just, I was like, what a weird time for a movie like this to come out, and
It did come out in July. You're right, 93.
and like not be out during the Halloween season. But again, that was a different time, different thinking. But for me, thinking when I think about Hocus Pocus, I think of it's very nostalgic because it brings me back to a time where I would watch it on Family Channel or Disney Channel or ABC, or it might have been something I rented at Blockbuster. It represents like this childhood memory that I'll always like look back at and give me warm and nice feelings. So when I heard Disney Plus was bringing it back, I thought, damn, it's been a minute since I actually watched Hocus Pocus. And Disney really knows how to get that nostalgia. Like they really know how to pull those nostalgia strings, especially when
that is their brand for sure.
Exactly. So when they said that we're going to bring back Hocus Pocus with the original cast, I got a little excited for it. But after watching it, I felt that there was a disconnect from when I was that kid, and even a little bit past that point, I just didn't feel the nostalgia anymore. So
just to confirm, Anthony, is this for when you're rewatching the first film, or is this when you're watching Hocus Pocus 2?
When I was rewatching the first one. So
got you, okay.
Getting into that, going back to it, I just didn't get the same feelings that the feelings I usually would have felt when I was maybe a younger age. And then going into the sequel of Hocus Pocus, I didn't connect with it as much as I thought I would. It didn't give me the nostalgia feels that I expected to receive. I thought the story wasn't as charming, and it didn't keep my attention like connected like the first one did. But performance wise, Bette Midler, is this show, the movie stealer. She's she encompasses that role so much, and I haven't seen her act in a really long time. And those are the roles where I remember Bette Midler, and it's always like, I think of her as the witch from Hocus Pocus. That's my first introduction to her, and she, like, 30 years have passed and she still can hit it on the nail. But like stepping back from this movie, I felt like, man, I've grown up so much. This is maybe not the movie for me anymore. This is maybe what I realized was maybe it wasn't Hocus Pocus that was nostalgic for me, but it was everything that kind of revolved around it, like renting it at Blockbuster or watching it
And
on
just
ABC
Halloween, right?
and Halloween. And I think these are things that are not part of my life anymore. Um, but again, this is still spooky fun for the family. I think a lot of people
Right.
will enjoy it. And I think that's all it really is. Like that's its end game, is to be that family fun. And I think a lot of people will enjoy that. But for me, as someone who started with the first one and then coming into the second one, I kind of felt disconnected from it. And and the story wasn't that captivating for me to really like, oh, I'm really excited. And what I'm watching right now is what I dreamt about for 30 years. Then again, I really didn't think the first one was I really didn't think the first one was that movie that something I wanted to see continue. I thought the first one was
Right.
perfect and that's where it ended. But again, Disney and their nostalgia is they're always trying to get you back into something. So,
Right.
but that was for me. And I think a lot of family members and younglings, I call them younglings.
Younglings, yeah.
I think they'll enjoy it. I think a lot of people will enjoy it. There are points of this story that are really funny, especially with the three sisters and how they have like this slapstick comedy between them, very
Yeah.
Three Stooges feel to it. But again, it just doesn't have the magic that I wanted it to have that the first one did. But again, that's just me, and that's not like, again, this is a great movie for a lot of people, but for me, it just missed the mark.
I got you. And it's interesting, for me, like, Hocus Pocus was such a huge aspect of my childhood. And it's funny that you said, yeah, that movie did come out in July, which is funny. And I was like, maybe did it come out in July so it'd be on home release? No, but it was like, no, it didn't come out on VHS until January 1995. So go figure that. But like, honestly, like, Hocus Pocus was such a big film for me, and I honestly really enjoyed this film. I thought it did a great job of recapturing the magic of the original without being an imitation. And I think, when we see Bette Midler and Sarah Jessica Parker and oh my goodness, Kathy Najimy, like, they're just like right back on the mark. Like, it's like they haven't missed a beat. They all look great. They all are having a great time. And like right out the gate, I was having a lot of fun with this just because it was trying to do its own thing. Shay, jump on in. Give us your history with Hocus Pocus. Give us your thoughts on the film, the new film.
I don't think I've ever seen the original Hocus Pocus, or at least not to my knowledge. If I've seen it, it I remember bits and pieces of it. Maybe it was on the Family Channel growing up, and I might have
Really,
watched
eh?
it. Yeah, I don't think it was never really for me. It never spoke to me. I think I don't know, just something about it just never spoke to me. So when I was going into this one, I was like, yeah, I got to do a little refresh here. I could watch the first one, but do I have enough time? And if you know anything about the movie podcast schedule, time is not of the essence anymore. We don't have much time here. We're constantly
Time
watching
is your
things.
enemy. Yeah.
Time is our enemy here on the show. So I only had about like a few minutes. So I'm like, you know what? YouTube is my friend. So I watched as many recap videos as I could, and I got the gist of it. I'm like, okay, I think I know what I can expect going into this. So watching the second one, I had a good time. I didn't really have extremely high hopes. In fact, I was kind of going into it assuming that it might be maybe something that's a little cheesy, a little hokey. So I was like, okay, maybe they might kind of go down that road of like a Disney Channel original where it'll totally just go right above my head, or not above my head, but totally sideline me like it would have for Anthony, like you're saying. But I kind of laughed a lot, and I was enjoying where the story was going, and I was like, you know what, this is something that I wouldn't mind watching again on Halloween next year or down the road. It's pleasant, it's digestible, it's fun, it's got some jokes that actually made me really howl and laugh. So I was like, you know what, if it was able to do that, I think I had a pretty good time with it. I enjoyed the chemistry between the sisters. My only complaint is I wish there was more Hannah Waddingham. I absolutely love her because of Ted Lasso. So to see her kind of be in this movie, and then it was a little bit of a cameo is what it felt like. Who knows if they're gonna expand this world any further? Maybe make a Hocus Pocus 3, and she has a bigger role in that or something. But that's kind of what I was hoping for. But pleasantly surprised, enjoyed it. It didn't, light my broom on fire, but it definitely made me go, yeah, that was a good movie, and I had a good time with it.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like, you're making a sequel to something from not just 30 years ago, but it's a different time. It was like when you're bringing something back, we've seen this countless times over, especially in the streaming era. of, we're going to bring the show back, but we're doing it with like this different type of vibe, like this squeaky clean vibe or this different feel to it. And it doesn't feel like what the original felt like. But this movie felt like the original. It felt like it was the same DNA. It felt like these characters we're picking up where they left off, and they don't feel like they are massively different from where we last saw them. And I think I like that a lot. As someone who watches Hocus Pocus yearly, this movie, like it embodies that. It has that feeling to it. And when I was also worried about is there are some plot points in the first film where they're talking about like, oh, it's like only a virgin can light the candle, and it's like things like that where I feel like, in today in a more different society, we would maybe let's not address that, or let's not use that terminology in a Disney Plus original. But they do, and it's like it's interesting. It's such a small thing, but it's nice that like they took something that was crucial to the first film, and they didn't try and find a different way around that. And I really love the new cast. I think the new cast in this film, they're so fun to watch. I think the three friends are great together. They have a lot of fun, but they also mesh really well with the larger world. It's great to see Doug Jones return as well too as Billy, who's like just so iconic in the first film. Maybe down the road, we'll see if we do get a sequel, we'll get some of the other original cast members come back as well too. And it'll be, we'll get that meshing that, we sometimes see with, with reboots or, legacy kind of reboots of these series. But, I think this movie did everything that it needed to do. And I think it was just well made, and Fletcher directed a great film. It was a really great, time duration as well too. Like the length of it, I think was spot on. The first Hocus Pocus, maybe because I watched it all the time growing up with commercials, felt like it was forever, even though it was probably a really short movie. I'm going to get the length of it now, but I think this movie just did a lot with its length. It had a lot of great moments, a lot of funny scenes in it, and I think it embraced what made the original great. It's only 96 minutes, wow, but yeah, you watch out with commercials. That's like 4 hours back on cable back in the day. But no, I had a great time with it. And I think if you're someone who loves Hocus Pocus, this is, as Anthony loves to say, this is, I think, the sequel that you've been waiting for. Like, this is something it's true to the original, but also forges its own path. And I think I had a lot of fun with it. That was the biggest thing for me.
I want to say, like, the beginning of this movie kind of opened up a different idea for what I maybe would have wanted to see. And that's strange because, we want to see the original cast come back. We want to see that team. But when the movie opens up to when they were younger, when these three witches were kids, and I thought, man, what a missed opportunity to tell a story about when they were kids rather than when they were adults, and actually have a prequel to this movie, and then maybe make the third one, or because I thought that as children witches will say, there's there's a story that can be told there, and especially with these types of characters, and
those actors were great too, right?
Yeah,
those young kids were spot on impressions.
Exactly, and they have their personalities, and seeing them as children, I would love to see that story rather than have watched this story. And that's just something I took from watching the film.
Sure, and maybe in the future, maybe we will get to see a third one where we get to explore more of their youth, and and bring back Hannah Waddingham as well too, because she was very spooky and frightening in her time in this film, and we'd love to see more of her. There's always room for more Hannah Waddingham on the movie podcast, always. Any other final thoughts before we get to our final recommendations? We're good to go. Shay, I'm going to get you to start us off.
Yeah, I'd say watch it. I'd say if you're a fan of Hocus Pocus 1, then Hocus Pocus 2 is a great continuation. It's a lot of fun. It's nostalgia, and it just has the Halloween spooky feel that I kind of wanted from a Disney film. So yeah, watch it.
Awesome. Anthony, how about yourself?
For the family, I would definitely suggest this. This is great for a family movie to put on and during the Halloween season. If you are a fan of Hocus Pocus, you might want to watch the first one more than the second one. It will kind of bring you back to the time period of watching that first movie. But
sure,
for me, again, it didn't leave that impression, and it didn't really connect with me as much as that first one. And again, it's more of like a nostalgia thing than the movie itself. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Awesome. I'm going to say watch it. I had a great time with it as a big fan of the original. This one, felt like it respected that legacy and also, forged a new path to hopefully tell more stories within this universe, because I think there's a lot more stories that we could tell, and I would love to see a Hocus Pocus 3. Thank you so much for listening to the movie podcast review of Hocus Pocus 2. Don't forget, we have interviews coming up for this very movie next week on the movie podcast. We'll be talking to the cast and director, so stay tuned for that. We are also welcoming back Michael Giacchino to the movie podcast. He's making his return. He's now an official friend of the show, where we'll be talking about Werewolf by Night. And next week, you'll also be able to check out our review for that film. You've seen maybe already from our social media posts. We really dug it, and I think you're going to really dig it too. So stay tuned for all of that. And as always, next week, we have some cool things happening on the movie podcast, some big announcements, some big changes for the show going forward. So you don't want to miss that. Make sure you stay tuned for all of that. And as always, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd at The Movie Podcast. Write into the show at hello@TheMoviePodcast.ca and join our Discord. Shay's doing some great work in there with the questions of the week. We have lots of great discussions going on. You won't want to miss it. Hopefully, the Movie Podcast studio will be back to normal very, very soon. But until then, that was this time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.